Okay, we're back for another lesson on this 6-6. And if you have the notes in front of you, fine. If you don't, no big deal. Like I said, you can just watch and soak it in. Okay, so if you have the notes, I'm going to start on the very back page and I'm going to begin with number 9. And if you don't have the notes, like I said, just watch and soak it in. So first of all, reviewing from yesterday, can you tell me how many complex roots should there be? Or, in other words, how many zeros? 3. Whatever that highest exponent is, that's how many complex roots or how many zeros. So first, I want to see if we can find all 3 on the computer like we did yesterday. So, and I say computer because I'm talking about where the graphing calculator is. If you happen to have your own graphing calculator, perfect. All right, so I'm going to where my graphing calculator is. Remember, you want to hit Y equals, it's the top left button, and I'm just going to clear this off. So I'm going to hit clear, and I'm going to type in this equation. So what do we have? X to the third. So remember, here's your X. So X, here's your caret. Raise it to the third. Now, remember, I have to right arrow to get that cursor to drop. So the right arrow, it drops it down. So after x to the third minus 3x squared, so I'm going to come over here, minus 3 back to the x. I'm going to do my squareds always right here. So minus 3x squared. And then what? Plus x minus 3. Okay, plus x and then minus 3. Minus 3. Okay, once I have my equation in there, then I'm going to hit graph. If it touches in 3 nice locations, then I'll write down my answers and be done. Okay, that's what happened yesterday. So let's see today. I'm going to hit graph. Uh-oh, today it only touches once, which means there's one real solution and the other 2 have to be imaginary since it only touches once. Now this looks like a 3, so I'm going to verify. So I'm going to go second table, and sure enough, 3 is an answer because there's a 0 in the y column. All right, so I know one answer is x equals 3. So I'm going to write that down. So I've got x equals 3. Now, because I know that there's supposed to be 3 answers total, then I'm going to find the other 2 mathematically. So today we're going to begin synthetic division. So one thing I want you to know is if the highest exponent is a 3, then the first time we do synthetic division, then the exponent will go down to x squared. And I can solve x squared problems lots of ways. There's factoring, the quadratic formula, and sometimes the square root method, which I'll remind you about in a minute. Okay, so I know that if I do synthetic division with this answer, then my answer will go down to x squared, and then I can solve from there. Okay, so this is my 0. So remember, first you put the 0 in the box. So since 3 is my 0, that's going to go in the box. And then I pull down the coefficients, drop, drop, drop. So in front of the x cubed is 1. In front of the x squared is negative 3. In front of the x is 1. And the constant is negative 3. And then remember, whatever this first number is, you bring it down. So bring down the first number. Multiply. So I multiply those. 1 times 3. And I add these. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Go back to multiplying. 3 times 0 is 0. I add these. 1 plus 0 is 1. Go back to multiplying. 3 times 1 is 3. Go back to adding. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Okay, so remember how when you do synthetic division, whatever that highest exponent is, it drops down 1. So this 1 is going to be in front of an x squared. The 0 would be in front of an x. So there's no point in putting plus 0x because that's just 0. So after the x comes the constant. So this 1 is just the constant. And the last number is the remainder. And we want this remainder to be a 0. If the remainder is not a 0, then we've done something wrong. Okay, so since the remainder is 0, then these are the only 2 numbers I need to worry about. And all I have to do is set my answer equal to 0 and solve it, and I'll have all my answers. Now, the great thing about this problem is because there's no x in the problem, I can do the thing called the square root method. So the square root method's goal is to get x squared by itself and square root. So in order to get x squared by itself, I would have to subtract 1 from both sides. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. So all you're left with is x squared. Bring down the equals. And then 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And then to get rid of the squared, I'm going to square root. Remember, the minute you square root, slap down that plus minus. That's what gives you the second and the third answer. So over here, the squared and square root cancel, leaving x. And do you remember who takes that negative out of the square root? I does. And then you're left with a positive square root of 1. But what's the square root of 1? 1. So it's plus or minus 1i, which you could just write as plus or minus I. So here's 2 answers. And the third answer was from the calculator. So we have 1, 2, 3 answers total. Okay, so this did require having to do some math, and that's because not all the answers could be found with the calculator. Okay, the next one I want to look at is number 7, if you're following along. Now, how many complex roots should this guy have? It should have 4, because that's the highest exponent. All right, first let's see if we can find it with our calculator. Okay, so I'm going to type that whole thing in. So I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to clear this off. And I'm just going to type, hopefully you kind of get how to do it now. So x raised to the 4th power. I got a right arrow to kick that cursor down. Plus 4x to the 3rd. Then I got a right arrow to drop that cursor down. Plus 4x squared. 4x squared plus 36x. Got some big numbers in here. Minus 45. Okay, let's see if it touches in 4 nice locations. Graph. Okay, I can only see 2. So it looks like we have 2 real answers, so the other 2 must be imaginary. So this looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like a negative 5, and that looks like 1. So let's see. So second graph. And negative 5, let's see if it's an answer. Yep, negative 5's an answer because there's a 0 in the y column. And 1's an answer because there's a 0 in the y column. So negative 5 and positive 1. All right, so negative 5 and positive 1 are both answers. So now I'm going to have to do math to get my other 2 answers because remember I need 4 total. Now this one is going to be a little crazy. We're going to do synthetic division twice because I need to get this down to x squared. The first time I do synthetic division, it'll go to x cubed. The next time I do it, it'll go to x squared, and then I can solve with the square root method like the last problem, if possible, factoring or quadratic formula. Okay, so first I'm going to do synthetic division with the negative 5. But if I wanted to do synthetic division with the 1, I could. So these are zeros, and first you put the 0 in the box. Pull down the coefficients, drop, drop, drop. So I've got a 1, a 4, a 4, a 36, and a negative 45. And then bring down the first number. So I bring down the first number, multiply. So I multiply negative 5 and 1. That makes negative 5. And then I'm going to add. If I add those, I get negative 1. Go back to multiplying. Negative 5 times negative 1 is 5. Go back to adding. 4 plus 5 is 9. Back to multiplying. Negative 5 times 9 is negative 45. If I add these, I get negative 9. If I multiply the negative 5 and negative 9, I get 45. And if I add those, I get 0. Now, I always want that remainder to be 0. So if my remainder is 0, I'm looking pretty good. Now, so far, my x to the 4th has only gone to x cubed. So I'm going to do synthetic division with my other 0 to get it to the x squared. So I'm just going to take this answer where it is, and I'm going to put 1 in the box right there. And then I'm just going to look at the 1 in the box and these numbers. So I'm just going to get rid of everything else so you can't see it. So I bring down the first number. So I'm going to bring that 1 down. And then multiply. 1 times 1. Add. That's 0. Multiply. 1 times 0 is 0. Add. That's 9. Multiply. 1 times 9. Add. That's 0. And remember, you wanted that remainder to be 0. If your remainder is not 0, you've screwed up somehow. Okay, so remember the first time I did synthetic division, x to the 4th goes to x cubed. The next time it goes to x squared. So this 1 is in front of an x squared. The 0 is in front of an x, so 0x, which I don't need to write. And after the x comes the constant, so that 9 is the constant. So all I have to do is set this equal to 0, solve it, and I'll be done. And luckily for us, because there's no x, I get to do the square root method again. So the goal is to get this x squared by itself and square root. So to get rid of addition of 9, we're going to subtract it. The x squared comes down. 0 minus 9 is negative 9. I'm going to square root both sides. Slap down that plus minus. And then who takes the negative out? I. You're left with a positive square root of 9. And then what's the square root of 9? 3. So it's plus or minus 3i. Now, I could do another, but we've got this lesson to 11 minutes. So I think I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to ask you guys to try 2 problems kind of like this on your quizzes and see if you can do them. And then we're going to practice a little bit more tomorrow and the next day. All right, that's it for today. Smiley face.